Today on Ag News Daily.
90+% of the grain sources have some type of level of mycotoxins, and in many cases is more than one. That's which even complicates the situation even more.
Well, welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show. I am excited to be joined today by Michelle Stangler, coming to us live from the World Dairy Expo. Michelle, for those of our listeners who have never attended the World Dairy Expo, including myself, tell us a little bit more about the show.
Well, it's definitely a fun week, and there's a few different components of what makes Expo. One is the Dairy Cattle Show, which you might see behind me, and it's their first time having commentators. So think sports, but it's for a cow show. So that's been cool to listen to some of it. Of course, they prepared weeks and months in advance. So that's really interesting. I grew up in a dairy farm. So just to hear that little drama of cows and who will ultimately be the supreme cow chosen tomorrow night. And in disclosure, we are recording this Thursday night, but there's that cow show. So a lot of cows across the United States and Canada and different countries. And then there's the expo part, the trade show, where there's a lot of technologies for farmers, dairy farmers, and folks in the industry. Data was a big topic. So just a lot of different things here at Expo, but it's definitely been a fun week. And I'm excited that we have an interview from Expo later in today's episode.
Michelle, the most important question is, do they have dairy samples out on display for attendees?
Well, they have free milk. I think that is a really good plus. They have a grilled cheese stand done by the UW-Madison College students here in Wisconsin. And so that's a good go-to. But yeah, trying to get my picture of all dairy products here.
Well, I would certainly be in line for the grilled cheese if I were there. I'm a big grilled cheese fan, but that sounds like a fun event, and I'm looking forward to that interview later in the episode. Let's talk weather, because I'm sure just like up there, it has been hot. It is certainly hot here in the Midwest. And the Central Plains and Canadian prairies have also been seeing some record heat recently, with temperatures anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit above normal temperatures due to a slow moving weather ridge. Dry, warm conditions from the southern plains to the northeast are creating some ideal harvest weather, while the west coast remains cooler and wetter with rain and even some mountain snow expected. Rain chances for the upper Midwest and the northern plains are in the plans, though, here late this week, potentially signaling a pattern shift, though most models predict a drier than average October for much of the U.S., and the West Coast has the best chance for normal or above normal rainfall, while drought may expand across Texas and the Mississippi Delta. This, of course, is certainly advantageous for farmers as they are getting in the fields. We hope to get bean harvest, finished up hopefully this weekend, and the Corn Belt is going to stay mostly dry, but there could be a little rain in the forecast next week that could disrupt some progress. The wheat belt also should see some improved soil moisture for their winter wheat planting, and the La Nina pattern is expected to influence late fall and winter weather. A possible tropical storm threat looms here in the mid-October in the Gulf and the Atlantic, but overall dry, warm weather is aiding harvest, and a cold front with showers this weekend may bring some delays, but overall the central and southern plains remain mostly dry. Through the weekend, we could see some rain, and that should help benefit that winter wheat country as well. So all in all, it seems like a pretty good weather pattern for where folks really need that. Dry and warm here in the corn belts, and a little wetter in the parts of winter wheat country.
Yeah, harvest is really continuing this week. The USDA's latest crop condition report shows minor changes this week, with overall progress tracking close to the 5-year average. Corn remains rated at 66% good to excellent, unchanged from last week. Development is slightly behind last year, with 91% of the crop in the dent stage and 71% reported as mature. Harvest has just begun, with 18% of the crop harvested so far. On the soybean side, conditions improved slightly, rising 1 point to 62% good to excellent. About 61% of the crop is dropping leaves and 19% has harvested to date. I know on the corn silage side of things, folks are really getting into those fields. I'm talking to some farmers across here United States, and they're telling it's a early season, and some parts, of course, here in the States dry, some wet. So just continuing to get into those fields. It's crazy to think we're into October now.
Yeah, Michelle, I was curious to know with silage, especially up there in dairy country, have they mentioned anything about where moisture levels are coming in?
I don't follow that too much. Definitely a good question. Something to look into.
Well, as we switch tracks here, all eyes are on, once again, the government. As we're seeing a government shutdown, the USDA is scaling back operations after that federal shutdown began early Wednesday morning. The White House Office of the Office of Management and Budget requires each agency to maintain a contingency plan, and according to that plan, over 42,000 USDA employees have now been furloughed. That's nearly half of the agency's workforce, which stood at just under 86,000 employees right before the shutdown. Services facing disruptions include much of the Risk Management Agency, Natural Resource Conservation Service, Foreign Agricultural Service, and the Food and Nutrition Service. This shutdown is hitting farm-facing programs hard, with more than 6,000 of the total 9,000 Farm Service Agency employees now off the job. In contrast, the Food and Safety Inspection Service is keeping most of its staff on duty, with just over 500 of their 7,600 employees furloughed. Randy Russell with the Russell Group told Brownfield earlier this week that the shutdown is already delaying farm payments, including ARC and PLC and mandatory conservation programs, which is coming at quite a time of year here as we're in harvest season. Farmers are also losing access to new loans, conservation planning, and USDA reports. Some USDA websites have even gone dark, and on social media, Secretary Rollins confirmed trade negotiations are also paused. Russell also added that essential services like SNAP, meat inspection, and the animal and plant health programs are still operating. And he says that the Forest Service firefighters are considered essential and will also remain on duty. While there's hope the shutdown will be brief, Russell said that, among other analysts, they warn on Wednesday morning both sides in Congress appear deeply entrenched and are not currently talking. So we don't really have a timeline here, Michelle.
I heard some speculation maybe it'll last this weekend, but it'll be interesting, especially with some of those USDA reports that come out. But here's a big piece of news. Corteva Agriscience, one of the world's largest agriculture input companies, is planning to split into two independent, publicly traded companies by the second half of 2026. The move, announced Wednesday this week, will separate Corteva's seed business, home to brands like Pioneer, Brevant, and Dairyland, from its crop production division, which includes herbicides, fungicides, and other chemical products. The new seed company, temporarily called SpinCo, is expected to account for 56% of Corteva's total 2025 net sales, or about $9.9 billion. It will focus on genetics, traits, and breeding innovations. Meanwhile, the remaining business, referred to as New Corteva, will retain the crop production portfolio, aiming to grow through efficiency, innovation, and emerging technologies like biologicals. Its 2025 sales are forecast at $7.8 billion. Corteva says the separation is designed to unlock value for shareholders and sharpen the strategic focus of both businesses. But for farmers, the impact will likely come down to how the split affects the products, services, and relationships they rely on. CEO Chuck Magro will lead SpinCo, while Chairman Greg Page will remain with New Corteva. Industry analysts say the move reflects a growing investor preference for pure play, focused businesses that are easier to evaluate financially, but Corteva stock has declined over 14% since reports of the split surfaced in mid-September. The company is expected to finalize the separation structured as a tax-free spinoff by late 2026, pending regulatory approvals. So by the time next year, it'll be interesting what those companies will look like and the interactions between farmers.
Yeah, I haven't been on social media much this week, so I don't know what the reaction has been from the ag community, but I am sure there is a reaction nonetheless. Soybean farmer leaders were in Houston, Texas late in September to present a ceremonial check for $275,000 to the Andersons, Inc. The funding supports an expansion project for the Port of Houston that will boost soybean meal export capacity. This project is expected to be completed in the first quarter of 2026 and will allow the facility to begin exporting soybean meal for the first time. The investment is part of a broader strategy by U.S. soybean farmers to strengthen international market access. With new soybean processing plants coming online across the country to meet rising demand for renewable fuels, more soybean oil is being produced, and that means more soybean meal as a byproduct. While much of that meal continues to supply the domestic livestock industry, farmer leaders say it's critical to expand export infrastructure to ensure long-term market stability, and increased access to global buyers not only supports prices but also builds resilience into U.S. agricultural supply chains. The Port of Houston project represents a concrete step in that direction, positioning U.S. farmers to capitalize on both renewable trade and the growing international demand for high-protein feed ingredients.
Well, now transitioning into some dairy news. After months of hearings and debate, changes to the federal milk marketing orders are now in effect. But as American Farm Bureau Federation President Zippy DeVolve explains in a report this week, the update still leaves many dairy farmers struggling. While the newly updated FMMO took effect in June, the results have been mixed, DeVolve said. One of the biggest concerns is the increase in the make allowance. That's the amount deducted from a farmer's milk check to help cover processing costs. In just 3 months, that change has cost America's dairy farmers more than $337 million. While USDA is now required to survey processor costs every 2 years, they haven't announced when the next survey will begin. AFBF is urging USDA to move quickly to schedule it so future hearings reflect real, up-to-date processing costs. And that was something certainly talked about here at World Dairy Expo. I also got the chance and asked a few folks this question of what were they hearing or seeing at this year's World Dairy Expo. So let's get into those short clips.
Most of the dairies here at the World Dairy Expo are talking about just low prices, concerns about low prices. There's a little too much supply in the marketplace, and they're feeling the pain of that. They're making it up with beef prices where they can, but I still think there's just a little nervousness with it.
We've mainly been networking with a lot of industry professionals this year at the Dairy Expo. We've been kind of walking around the trade show and just looking at everything they have to offer.
Oh, lots of technology, huge machinery.
Well, this is our first year to be here, but it's encouraging to see that dairy is alive and well.
I mean, a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff. Just walk around the buildings, going to a lot of vendors, talking to some people. It's going through here and there. Everybody not really looking forward to anything specific, just enjoying the beautiful day.
I'm just hearing about all the new technology and seeing what that stuff looks like, and just watching the cows show, you know.
At World Dairy Expo, I'm hearing overwhelmingly that our farmers are really excited about the new technology that we have coming to the forefront.
As we look at farm bankruptcies, farmers in the Federal Reserve's 9th District are experiencing increasing financial stress, according to the latest Ag Credit Survey from the Minneapolis Fed. Over the past 2 years, farm incomes, of course, have declined and financial conditions have worsened. And North Dakota lender commented recently, farmers are suffering this year. If it's prolonged into 2026, we could see many farms fail. While the number of Chapter 12 farm bankruptcies remains low by historical standards, filings are rising. In the first half of 2025, 181 Chapter 12 bankruptcies were filed nationwide, which is a 57% increase compared to the same period in 2024. That's more than were filed in all of 2022 or 2023. In the 9th District alone, 9 farms filed for bankruptcy in the second quarter. Ag Attorney Joe Pfeiffer attributes part of the rise to lingering effects of disrupted export markets, especially in China, and he also emphasized the emotional burden facing many farmers. So, not a great year ahead of us on those fronts, Michelle.
Yeah, and as we look at turkey producers, there was a recent report from the USDA released late last week showing turkey production in the U.S. continuing to decline, with 195 million turkeys forecasted here for 2025, a 3% drop from 2024. Since 2016, production has trended downward, with the only notable rebound occurring between 2022 and 2023. The top 6 turkey-producing states accounted for 68% of total U.S. output in 2025. Minnesota remains the top turkey producer, holding steady at 32 million birds. North Carolina followed here with 28 million, a 4% increase from the previous year. Arkansas, though, saw a significant 12% drop to 22 million turkeys. Indiana's production remained flat at 20 million, while Missouri and Virginia each produced 15 million birds, down 3% and 2% respectively. Despite, though, concerns over rising bird flu cases, Thanksgiving turkey prices aren't expected to spike dramatically. Bernd Nelson, an economist with the American Farm Bureau Federation, said it shouldn't have a major impact going forward on the prices, and added the prices are definitely higher than last year, about 40%, he said, but he doesn't think they're going to go a whole lot higher above where they're at. So while they're higher, hopefully not a sharp increase between now and Thanksgiving, because I don't know about you, Delaney, I'm certainly looking forward to my Thanksgiving turkey.
I think many folks are as well, Michelle. Switching tracks here, Michelle, AGCO is seeking permission from a federal court for a rare appeal in the Federal Trade Commission's ongoing right to repair lawsuit against John Deere, now filing a motion in late September. This follows an August ruling that allowed Deere access to confidential competitor information collected during the FTC's investigation, including sensitive pricing, sales, and financial data from AGCO, CNH Industrial, and Kubota. AGCO argues that the ruling fails to apply the heightened protections typically afforded to non-party materials and insists that immediate review is necessary to prevent the disclosure of critical business information. The company warns that once the data is released, it cannot be safeguarded from misuse in the FTC case or related farmer lawsuits. According to Farm Equipment Magazine, this appeal would be heard by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, where AGCO aims to establish clear legal standards for the release of government-held competitor data in antitrust cases. John Deere has pledged vigorously to defend itself in this matter.
Well, here's some good news for the cattle industry. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has conditionally approved Zoetis' new injectable treatment, Dectomax CA1, for preventing and treating New World screwworm infestations in cattle. The product treats larvae and prevents reinfestation for 21 days. It'll be available starting in early 26, they say, with a 35-day pre-slaughter withdrawal period. The approval covers beef cattle, female dairy cattle under 20 months, pregnant beef calves, newborn calves, and bulls. FDA Commissioner Marty Makary emphasized the urgency of this approval, calling it the first in the U.S. for New World screwworm, and underscoring the agency's commitment to advancing critical animal medicines. The conditional approval allows immediate use, while additional data is collected for full approval. Timothy Schull, acting director of the FDA's Center for Veterinary Medicine, noted the drug is safe and expected to be effective. The product contains the same active ingredient as the fully approved Dectomax used for other parasites in cattle and swine. U.S. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins called the approval a victory for our producers, highlighting USDA's commitment to protecting animal health, strengthening the farm economy, and rebuilding the beef industry. And I know it may have moved markets a little bit here this week, too.
Well, we're certainly going to talk about that here in a little bit, Michelle. But before we do, as we talked about earlier, you are at World Dairy Expo this week, and you got to catch up with some exciting folks, one of which we're going to be hearing from this week on the podcast to talk about mycotoxins and more. So let's get into that interview.
Well, we're here at World Dairy Expo with Dr. Aldo Rossi with Amlan International. And it's an international show here.
Yeah.
A lot of cows, a lot of enthusiasts. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Yeah. So my name's Aldo Rossi, and I'm the Director of Veterinary Services for Amlan International. We're one of 6 divisions of Oil Dry, based here in the United States. Sorbent mineral is our business, and Amlan International has several products on our portfolio that help with animal health.
Now, mycotoxins is something that you're really looking into. Tell me about the brief overview of what are mycotoxins.
Yeah, so mycotoxins are produced by funguses, and when they go through a certain stage of their life cycle, they start producing these toxins, and those toxins are in grains, can be in finished feeds, and they can cause some damage to the gut, to the intestines, as well as get absorbed and then attack other organs in the body.
Now, this issue, has it always been an issue? Is it something something that you're really working on now? Was it an issue 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah, it's always been an issue. And every year it varies depending on the harvest and how the season is during the growth of the grains, whether it's corn, soybean, etc., wheat. So that it can vary in what types of toxins and the levels of those toxins. So yeah, they've existed for thousands of years. And our product, we have several products that help to mitigate those issues.
Okay, interesting. Now, tell me a little bit about your product itself, but also what problem you're trying to really solve, especially for dairy producers.
Yeah, absolutely. So our product, we have a product here, it's called Calibrin Z. And actually, we talk about it being more of a broad spectrum toxin binder. So it's not just for mycotoxins. So bacteria as well produce toxins, and those toxins have a negative effect on the animals as well. So our products do bind both mycotoxins from the funguses and bacterial toxins. So our product does bind both fungal toxins and bacterial toxins, both of which can affect the health and the production and performance of animals, the efficiencies. And so our product binds both of those, as well as some other negative compounds that animal can encounter while feeding. And by doing that, we bind those things. They just end up going right out the back end of the animal and not affecting the animal like it would if it wasn't there. So
a fact that you'd shared with me was that 94% of feed samples in global surveys contained mycotoxins.
Yeah.
It's a big issue. Do folks know about it? Like, as in, is it easy? Like, is it a prevalent problem that you can see in the cow after a few days?
Yeah, great question. So there are reports that come out annually. Some of them are produced by universities, laboratories, other companies that will show and give you indication of what kind of the toxins there are in their most recent harvest of the grains, as well as the levels. And as you mentioned, several of these reports for the last few years have shown that we've had 90+% of the grain sources have some type of level of mycotoxins, and in many cases is more than one. That's which even complicates the situation even more. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's something that the producer needs to be aware of. You may not necessarily see the physical aspects of those toxin bindings, or those toxins, outright. Some of them may just be subclinical, but over time it's just slowly eroding profits and efficiencies and health.
Yeah, tell me about that timeline of how you know that when you add said product to their nutrition diets that you can see some kind of benefit from it. It may take weeks, but...
Yeah, and actually in some cases it could just be days. Again, it depends on the level. Long-lived animals like a dairy cow, for example, as they're consuming daily, those toxins are being absorbed by the small intestines and going in the blood and going systemic. And so they're consuming more than it's actually being degraded or is being released back out into the feces. Eventually there is a cycle that occurs, but they're consuming more than is being released. So by using our product, and depending how old the animal is, our product can actually work fairly quickly within days. But in general, it'll take a few weeks before you actually see the compound effect of slowly removing those toxins, that cycle of going from the gut to the blood and back into the gut, to eventually eliminate some of those negative effects.
Because what mycotoxins do does affect that gut and then affects how healthy a cow truly is.
Absolutely. It gets absorbed. It goes into the liver. It goes to the reproductive tracts. So it's affecting the immune system, fertility, livability, and actually production.
Let's get into some of those things of what you, like that livability and some of those things that you probably talk about every day as cows.
Yeah. So, with the livability, you can have obviously different reasons for the mortality on a farm. Some of them can be mechanical injuries, for example, but some of them do come from these consumptions of these toxins. And with that occurring is that by us removing those toxins, we're allowing that animal then to be less stressed, right? There's going to be other stress factors, of course, environmental stress, management type stresses. And so by removing those toxins, you're actually helping the animal to overcome some of those other challenges.
Mm-hmm. Now we're here at World Dairy Expo. There's a lot of technology, a lot of people coming from international. What are some of those conversations that you're having here at Expo?
Yeah, what's interesting is that very similar conditions globally, right? I mean, they had the same sort of challenges, but particularly when it comes to the mycotoxins, the bacteria, diseases in general, management challenges, nutritional challenges. It's actually very similar globally. Yeah.
And so you're interacting with a lot of people from all over?
Yeah, we actually have some customers of ours that have come from South America.
Oh, wow.
So they're here as well this week. So, yeah.
So when you work with them, is it very different? Like, tell me about some of the differences you see in the dairy industry from the United States and other countries.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exchanges between technologies, whether it's the equipment they use, the barn designs. But what's interesting, each region, of course, has certain things that they're more focused on, and particularly in the tropical areas, you deal with more heat stress, for example. Maybe up here in the northern regions, deal with cold stress as well, where they don't. Some of those discussions are very similar, and there's actually great exchanges. Some of our customers actually went to a local dairy, and they spent all day with there, and again, they were just exchanging thoughts and ideas about common challenges, again, nutritional stuff, the management, the health of the animals, the different breeds, etc. So it was quite interesting to watch that exchange.
Now we talked a lot about mycotoxins and the people that you work with, but tell me a little bit about your background and how you're connected to the dairy industry.
Yeah, so, I'm a veterinarian by training, so graduated in the early 90s. Most of my training was more focused on the poultry industry. But here recently, been with Amlan International for about 3 years, a little bit over 3 years. And so I'm back to the practices and managing of multiple species, so dairies being one of them, swine, even go down to aquaculture and pets. So yeah, it's bringing back some of that old training from back in the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you know that you would be so passionate about mycotoxins?
No, actually, it's interesting you asked that question because early on in my career, I heard about them. And even back then in the 90s and early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of products that really stood out as things that could help provide solutions. But you can see that here over the last few decades that's becoming more prominent. There are solutions, and Amlan International has some of those. And, we started the Amlan International division, about 18 years ago. And so in the last 5 years, we've really focused on the North America business and North American customers. But internationally, we've had a lot of experience with our products and success with our products. So now we're bringing that here to the United States.
So what are you looking forward to in the next year? Is there some things on the horizons that folks should know?
Yeah, I'd just say, please look at our products. We have a very unique chemical compounds, that enhance the performance of our product. We've shown success, again, globally, but even here in the United States. And so we look forward to, expanding that and getting more people to know our products and our portfolio.
Well, thanks, Aldo, for joining the podcast here today.
Well, thank you for having us.
Well, thank you to Dr. Aldo Rossi for joining us on the podcast this week. But Delaney, what's happening in markets this week?
Well, like we've been talking about, there have been no shortage of headlines here for markets to trade. Starting out here with soybeans, that statement from the White House saying more support is coming this week coupled with the announcement of port investment dollars. Really, this week we've seen soybeans take the lead, and seeing this short-term rally here, I think, has many growers excited. Meanwhile, December corn set a new contract low back in mid-August. And so we're trying to see markets here recover from that now, and really watching that as kind of a level to move away from. We also saw President Trump posted on his Truth Social account about soybeans specifically, which I think has the markets excited. Certainly it has farmers excited. He said, quote, "Make soybeans and other row crops great again." And certainly the government shutdown has been impacting some fear as well. It's being closely monitored. But ultimately, we have questions around, will we see an October WASDE report? We won't have any government reports, of course, until funding is restored, and that could lead to either a delayed or canceled WASDE crop report altogether, as happened back in October of 2013 and then again in January of 2019. As we think about then on the livestock side, this announcement that you mentioned earlier, Michelle, of the vaccine for New World screwworm has the markets a little bit nervous that perhaps that's going to create the ability to import cattle once again from Mexico. And that's been weighing on the feeder cattle markets, especially feeder auctions, with sales reported anywhere from $10 to $20 lower than a week ago on some lighter demand action as well. But that's a look here at some of the market action for this week.
Well, it's definitely a busy time. We're into October. You said maybe you'll finish soybeans this weekend. Any idea of where those soybeans will go demand-wise?
It's hard to say, but definitely not to China, it seems like. So. But as folks are in the combine harvesting, they can stay in tune for the news with us all harvest season long. They can find us on every major podcasting platform and, of course, on YouTube. And they can find us on all major social platforms. But what do you say with that, Michelle? We let the people go.
Let's let them go.